Thank you.
All right, let's get started. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate all the support. The session's been awesome. But we'll get into it here. Talk about some up and coming things that we've been working on for Znode. All right, we'll start off with the vision. Some of you know this already, some of it, maybe it's new to you, but really what we've been focusing on for a while now, we call it the center of commerce, right? So we really see e-commerce and Znode, obviously in particular, to be in the center of people's, commerce in general, right? And what that means to us is really like tying into a lot of the stories that we've been hearing, right? You can really have Znode, do a lot of things. It's very flexible. We have the ability to connect to external systems. You can run multi-channel on Znode very easily, B2C, B2B, B2B to X, and B stores, which we'll be highlighting today in a little bit here. Syndication out to marketplaces, running your international stores, distributor portals, and what we're calling the Commerce Portal, which we'll also, we'll be releasing soon here, and we'll be getting into some of those details coming up here. But really, that's we continue to strive for Znode to be that center of commerce for everyone's programs.
Any questions on that, as to where we are headed? So, and what you'll see today is that B stores that Frank talked about will showcase you. We're releasing that in the next month. Commerce Portal we're going to release before the end of the year. But really, and we're going around all this based on our customer needs and prospect needs and what we are hearing, right? We don't want to just be a B2C or here's your B2B platform with pricing, We want to be a lot more, right? So, because all this is complex, right? None of the B2B implementations or customer needs are same. They're always unique. And our goal here is to give a platform to our customers that they can grow in, right? They can do all their special, non-unique B2B stuff, but also leverage all that product data, all that pricing data, all those ERP integrations with other ways of how they do business, how they do business with their different channels like dealers and distributors and so on. So the idea is to leverage that central place where you've already done all the hard work for product data, ERP integrations, third-party integrations, and consume that for all the different things. Does that make sense, concept-wise? Right. Go ahead, Jim.
Some of the marketplace.
Go back to the other side.
What you see where Znode plays in that right now, and what you see in the future, if there's anything different.
So from a syndication, that's really to send product feeds and stuff, right? We're never going to be like an Amazon marketplace. Now with B stores, we do and marketplace is a pretty complex term, right? But we do with what we are releasing now, you can do managed marketplaces. So we'll showcase that to you.
What syndicate are you able to syndicate through?
Yes, so syndicate basically product feeds, yes. To some of the marketplaces.
All right, so we'll quickly go through this, and you've heard before that it's not just about product development. We're going to be focusing on that today with the roadmap, but the reason why we are successful is product development. We have our training and academy that's run by Walter, onboarding and making sure that people know how to use Znode. Customer success team, and constantly talking with our customers and our partners, and obviously a huge part of it is our support channel, which is very good. Jessica's here, and like her and her team are just help any issues that come up, and really holistically allow us to succeed with the platform. Some highlights. Tom showed this earlier. Really, this is a slide just to show that we are investing in the product. We continue to invest in it. We are focusing on feature enhancements and 10 releases this past year. We release quarterly. Our support channel is number one, and like I said, Walters has certified a lot of people through our platform. Everything is online in our LMS now. We introduced videos to our knowledge base last year, which just, again, it helps people learn how to use the platform appropriately. And our new KB articles have been introduced, and we just keep growing that as well, right? So last year, Rupesh stood up here and we really talked about what we've been hearing from our customers and our partners and really where we should be focusing for the platform, right? And one of the big things, we hear a lot of things, but one of the main reasons that we hear people are gravitating towards Znode is really the focus on speed to market, right? And how we enable that as a platform. So that's really what we've been leaning into that over this past year, and we'll continue to focus on that. It leads to additional features, allows our platform to be more configurable. You can get programs up and running faster with more native functionality, right? So things that help us gear towards that are what you heard last year, and will continue. We need to simplify upgrades, right? And making that easier of a process. So we'll talk about some of the things that we have in the roadmap that are going to help with that. Increasing self-service. So you can go in and you can configure things and manage things through an admin and just allow various team members to be able to onboard and launch Znode without a lot of extra programming or custom development, right? And then along those lines, increasing the flexibility. So like we said, there's so many different channels you can run on Znode, and a lot of the people that gravitate towards us do so because you can customize it as well, right? So everything that we're doing and working on is trying to balance speed to market, configurability, as much configuration as possible without customization, but also allowing you and not putting you in a box and saying you can't customize the platform, right?
And then that really, that increased self-service and flexibility is low code. More configuration. How do we give you more and more through the admin tools, right? Because as soon as you have customizations and things that could be solved with configurations, that means you guys have to write less code, partners have to write less code, customers have to less customize, which means the whole testing and all that, right? Overall, your tech stack becomes smaller, right? So more and more, the whole idea is how do we we are seeing that our customers are doing these things with partners on their own. How do we just bring it to the platform and give more flexibility? And how do we make it a toggle in the admin? How do we give that configuration screen in the admin? That's what the whole increased self-service is.
All right. So one of the things that we've been working on that we'll be releasing here soon in the next probably month is what we call dynamic tables. And again, it's another way to configure and to allow you to customize Znode, right? So we're introducing a way that you can essentially create tabular data through the admin, so you don't have to go directly into the database, right? So similar to our other dynamic data and attribute model, you have another avenue for that can help support any of the customization that you do need to do, and it will allow you to not get to interrupt that upgrade cycle, right? So it's seems pretty simple. You can create and manage tables. You can create as many as you want. We're rolling out initially with some, the text area, numbers, and Booleans, like simple fields, just to see how people are utilizing this. But you can manage everything, search, edit records, like bulk, import and export all of those records within there.
So how does this help, right? So all our customers here and the customers who have not come to the event, right? None of our customers are standard, hey, here's one simple B2C store that I want to run, right? They all have unique cases, unique business use cases. And obviously I think a lot of you guys who are familiar with global attributes, how we allow you to create extender schemas for all the different entities, not just the BIM, right? That pretty much, I think if you're a Xenode developer, that is one of the capabilities that you probably have fallen in love with. If you're a partner, you've fallen in love with customer, to leverage that to extend all these entities, because it automatically generates the admin UI for you to configure, use that capability, have more control, and the APIs already, are available to get that data, send that data back, and so on. So that is a very, very heavily used feature of Xenode. If you're not using it, that means you need to learn about it, because it is a capability that pretty much every customer uses, and so on. Now what we are doing with dynamic tables is, right from the admin, you can go create your own structure of a DB table, right? So you don't have to go into database, customize anything, write APIs, all that. This does all of that for you. So I'll just take some use case examples. So for example, we have TKC, and you guys might have some data that has nothing to do with e-commerce, but you need to reference that, right? So you could now go into Xenode, say I want to create a new table, here are my fields or column names and whatnot and data types, and bam, there's your table, and you can now type to an integration to fill that table and use that data in your UI for whatever need you might have, or whatever business rule you might have. And you can create unlimited entities like that, right? I will take another example here, Staples or Rogan Shoes, right? Let's say you have store data and you've got other data that might be related to that, but that has nothing to do with e-commerce, but you need to show or use that somehow. So rather than building that in your ERP and calling that, you could send it to Xenode in a custom table. So it just gives us more flexibility, so that you're not doing those custom tables on your own, writing your own custom code, and now your tech stack around Xenode or extension has been eliminated. So this is going to be a pretty heavily used feature. So for example, rewards program, right? Everyone's rewards programs are unique. Well, you can now use a custom table and create a rewards table and manage all the rewards right there. So it should start to become very popular as you start using it.
All right. The next thing that we have, a couple of these things we've really been focusing on this last year. So we've been a lot of development efforts been going into these features that we're going to be talking about here. But what we're calling B stores, again, overview is really that's middle B in B2B to C, and that's self-service and allowing that middle B to essentially manage a lot more without going into the admin, right? So you as the first B can essentially set up your store, your main store, the regular Xenode store, and enable this feature that can just allow the middle B to have a lot more capabilities and help manage those program sites. So example of those are promotional product companies offering a branded shopping experience, dealers or resellers if you want to allow them to help manage their programs. Schools or organizations or team stores can utilize this to really do the heavy lifting in a full Xenode store, and then just surface some of that management, user management, order management, some of those things to that second B.
So like franchise models, right? So for example, we heard the Land and Code study yesterday, right? So if you have 32 locations and you wanted like mini stores for these locations where you can run your own promotion for that store and so on, you could go and launch a B store, which is a derivative of the main store, but it gives you self-service tools. The other example is dealers. So let's say Bradley Corporation has dealers, and they want their dealers to see all the orders that are coming in for them, right? Because in B2B, there's a lot of ways how people buy, right? And you want to make sure those orders are allocated to the correct dealer or reseller or whoever it is. But how do you expose that order portal to the dealer so the dealer can see, well, what orders are coming to me? Who are my customers, right? Now there's a self-service web storefront that is going to be available to dealers and franchise holders and so on, who can log into that portal and see their orders and their customers and so on. So for example, in your case, TKC, let's say one of the facilities wanted to see their, you have the store for them, but they wanted to access that and see all that. You don't have to give them Znode admin. You can give them this self-service web storefront. So we're calling it like and then the other things that there's a lot more you can do. So if I'm a manufacturer and I want to enable my resellers and give them their own stores, the dealers have control to upload their logo, create their own store experience, right? So they can go brand it, they can put some marketing content, they can even go do some selection of product assortment. So they can curate the products on their own and say, I want to launch this store. They can say this store only takes quotes, or this can be fully transactional, here's my PayPal or whatever credit card company that you turn on. They can go put their their credit card provider's information and launch a store. So we are seeing that with this B-store model, resellers or dealers, they can pretty much launch their own store in 5 minutes, all self-service, and even control their branding and so on, and then start accessing the orders and so on.
Right. So
Frank is going to do a quick demo here too.
Yeah. And again, we're releasing this in a month or so. We have a kind of a UAT site set up here, so bear with me. But like I said, it's a derivative of the main store. So you saw me log into our Maxwell hardware store with our sample data, and we have now had the ability, once you assign that user and give them ability to either manage these stores, help manage these stores, or launch them entirely, we have different capabilities there. They'll just, there's different ways that you can show up in the navigation or on their dashboard to manage stores, right? So what we've done is built this, and this is all a React app that we've developed and been working on, which is that self-service portal, right? So you don't have to log into the admin and show them all the capabilities within Znode. We can just surface what we want. And again, this is a platform to be built on top of. You can customize, but here's our starting point. Really, we have n number of stores. You can set timers on them. Essentially, they're up for a week and then they automatically close. You can assign as a store owner. You can have load users and have them help manage these programs with you. There's lots of capabilities, right? But really, there's two kind of big portions of it. It's the launching of stores or onboarding, and again, depending on your complexity of what program you're running, it can be done very simply. But essentially, we have a kind of a stepped process introduced. In 3 steps, you can launch a store, which I won't go through right now. But again, once you get through that step, now we have the ability to, for you to have your customers or that middle B help manage these things for you, right? So you need less people to manage these. We have dashboards, we'll be pulling in various analytics, the store performance. And then again, here's all the configurations that you can do. You can add to this as needed, but you name your store, you can select a subdomain, you can, on the main store, you can configure which catalogs that can be selected, whether they want to specify products, so they can then choose that master catalog and then say, hey, I only want these 2 categories, and then launch a store with that. Additional contact information, design settings, like Rupesh said, you can upload your logo, you can set your colors for whatever you store want to show in your store. There's some messaging, custom messaging that you can easily just add here, right? And then the big thing is the product selection. So like I said, you can come in here and say, here's what that main catalog is set up for. But now I can go in and say, okay, I want this category. I can choose which products I want to show up in my store, and I can save and launch that, right? Like Rupesh mentioned, we have user management, so you can onboard your own shoppers, assign.
Or see your shoppers as a dealer.
Yep. And, assign, change their role if you want them to help manage it. There's different capabilities there. You can see all the orders that are coming through. We also have quotes built into it, so if that's part of that workflow, you can see all of that stuff right from this new head, essentially.
So obviously this feature might not be used by all our customers, right? Everyone has unique use cases, but we heard from so many of our customers, hey, we have this need where, I'll give you an example, Rio Grande. It's a jewelry, jewelry manufacturer owned by Berkshire Hathaway. They have all these, and I'm using that example because it's a very common one. So there's mom and pop jewelry stores all over the country, right? And they have their own set of products that they sell in the store. But let's say, my wife goes there and she's looking for a jewelry. They say, okay, we have got this, but let me pull up my iPad and here's my store, rupesh.xyzjewelry.com. And they could have gone to Rio Grande and build that store, right? So now I, as a Brookfield jewelry store, mom and pop shop, I went in and I curated my catalog. I want rings, I want, bracelets, whatever, earrings. I curate my catalog from Rio Grande, and now I've got a store online that I can expose to my customers. So now when my wife goes on that iPad at the store, she also knows the URL to that. She can go home, browse, press the buy button, and now that Brookfield jewelry store owner, they've got an order. Rio Grande has got an order with their master, Zenode admin, and everyone is in business. That's a simple example of how this could be used. I mean, there are millions of use cases. You're in the Bucks team here, right? So Michael Ward was talking about it. So imagine Bucks, MilwaukeeBucks.com was on Zenode. If they wanted their partners, that are all around, and all these partnerships that they were talking about, and they wanted to create their own little merchandise stores, right? So they could go do that. So the whole idea is, rather than exposing the dealers and resellers and these partners to Zenode admin, they get their own self-service portal. Make sense?
Yep.
So very, very exciting for us.
And one of the big things that we're also trying to do with this is that main B, the manufacturer or the master distributor, then owns all of that customer data, right?
Yep.
So you can still cater to, and you can launch those small websites, but you still have access to all the customers, can contact and market and upsell them.
Any questions about it?
So dealers can launch their own stores?
Yes, dealers can. So what would happen is dealers would have an account on the master store, right? So in your case, for example, if Milwaukee Tools, right, has their store on Zenode, they turn on dealer capability or dealer store capability. That's a toggle in the admin at the store level. So now I've got Milwaukee, tools.com as a store. I create a new theme for these sub-sites, which might be a little bit lighter, right? And now you as a dealer log into your account, you're placing all your main orders so far on Milwaukee Tools as a dealer. You can see all that, you can see SAP invoices, you can do all that. But then right there's a button that says create my store. And you can go give it j.milwaukeetools.com. You can curate your product catalog and you're in business. Make sense, Jay?
Yep. And I didn't show it, but all of this can be managed from the Zenode admin as well.
Yeah, you can turn
You can
on. So
launch all those, turn them on and off. You can access it. You're going to see all the orders come through there as well. But this just allows that second B to help manage some of that and offload it.
Any questions? And obviously this is configurable. So if you don't turn on this feature in admin, you don't have to consume it.
All right.
Go ahead. This is in 9. We're releasing next month.
A lot of the things, obviously, everything that I'm showing will be in 10 once we release that. The things that I've shown so far, B stores and the dynamic tables should be coming out in the next month. and the next one will be towards the end of the year, the Commerce Portal, which we'll get into, and then we'll talk about Zeno 10 last.
So it will be released in 9, and then also obviously will be part of 10. Everything that is going to be in 9 is going to be part of 10. But we are releasing this now.
Yep. All right, any other questions? All right, we'll get on to Commerce Portal. The Commerce Portal is really a centralized location where you can manage all of your orders and create orders, manage orders. It is a new head that we're introducing in Znode, built entirely on React again, so you can see centralized location for order creation and management. And the cool thing about it is that it really supporting larger organizations that maybe have multiple teams that touch a single order, right? It's not just onesie twosies, but maybe there's a longer, more complex order process whether you're ordering them manually or say, it queues through the web store. But essentially you can build workflow around it, assign multiple team members, and really support that multiple tier structure, right, for order creation.
So Jim, you know how you guys are all used to the Znode admin order creation for call center, sales reps, field sales reps, all that, they use Znode admin, right? They go into Znode admin orders and create an order. This is a much more advanced version of that, and it's as a web store, so you don't have to they don't have to be in the admin, right? Because admin doesn't give all the cool UI features that already are in web store. So for example, call center team, they would have exposure to this nice UI. It's a separate web store that you just turn on, and basically it's for internal employees, CSR, sales reps, field sales reps. I know some of our customers, even their dealers, are able to place an order. So when they log in, it recognizes that it's a dealer, and they can do certain things. But overriding pricing, overriding shipping, managing statuses, sometimes, when you get a call, you're not really entering an order as an e-commerce. You might create a placeholder and Nitesh might say, hey, I'm going to call you back. I'm still working on all my sizes because it's a large order. You might start an order, but it might take a week for you to keep giving information before it actually becomes an order. So a lot of those capabilities, are available through the Commerce Portal. So giving you guys another app on top of Znode, because Znode already has all the product data, it already has all the integrations with ERP, it already has pricing, it already has all that figured out. So why not now, give you another tool for your CSR, sales reps and whatnot, so that you don't have to build a custom app again. Go ahead, Jim. You can override shipping, you can override all kinds of stuff in this. You're basically, like what our customer said was, hey, I've got Znode, I've got everything in there, I've got a legacy ERP, right now we take orders in our ERP, I want to do in Znode, your admin app is good, but it's not as advanced. We need a lot more advanced, and that's what this is.
Yep, and one of the key things, like right now, many of you know that when you're going in, whether it's the admin and obviously the web store, you're creating a cart first. So essentially you're ending with as best we can, a complete order. With the Commerce Portal, it starts as a partial. So you're just creating an order number and you can kind of build it over time, right?
So large orders, right? They don't happen on the phone in a second, right? Sales reps might be working on it. It might be a process.
Yep.
But you could go quickly create an order as well.
Yep.
End of the year, you're saying?
And
Yeah.
9, yes.
Yeah, end of the year we're shooting for, but we're obviously heavily invested in it right now. And I can bring it
Frank
up
is
here.
doing a demo. Go ahead, Brian.
So,
I think they have a question.
yeah, go ahead.
So we do this, like, we do split ship. Can I do this rather than looking at orders? Can I look at individual line items and then have orders be like a separate? Can I do the roll up different? Can I roll it up by line item rather than by?
So that's a great question from Jen from Dexco. Can she look at this data a little bit differently by line items or all that? So that's another big advantage, because it's a React app that sits on top of our APIs. customers are going to take this React app, and just like you take your B2C site or your B2B portal, and you do some customer experience changes, right? And that's the that's the biggest advantage, and that's why we separate it out of the admin, because right now you have to go and customize the admin app versus you now have full control over this React app and you can make it however you want it. It's another web store.
So I can use this, two things that I'm thinking about is, you said override, but could I also apply a customer service promotion?
Customer service promotion?
Kind of hidden from the customer, but.
Yes, that's the idea.
And then the other thing is, can I initiate impersonation from this?
So this is, so remember how we have impersonation on the website? Yes, that's a great point. You don't have to impersonate anymore, because as soon as you select an account, the whole app starts acting as that account.
I know
Right.
that I don't have to, but if I have the customer on the phone, the idea that I can go and impersonate them and see what they're saying at the same time, isn't that? makes
So that's a good question. So Jen asked, great question. If the customer is on the phone, can he or she also see exactly what the CSR is seeing? So remember, this app is, you could expose it to your dealers and resellers, and then it could be, thing. But that use case we use is for the web store. But I think we'll have to.
It's not the customer saying what the CSR sees, it's the CSR then being able to impersonate the customer to see what the customer is seeing. You
Yeah.
might be able to say, you have such and such on order, this is going to be delivered, now let's go back over and see, you have to order now this much more, or don't order anymore because this is not back ordered, you're going to receive.
Yeah. We can,
Yeah.
it's in the version 1 of this, it won't be there, but we can easily tie that in where you could launch that web store. If you're looking at a partial order, you could launch whatever web store that you're selecting, because you can see that right here. We're still selecting a store, you're selecting an account. The way that Znode works, you're going to select a customer, and you're going to get a lot of those configurations that come through that are already configured with Znode. So we'll have that data and be able to introduce impersonation from here as well, but we don't have it on V1 for sure. Yeah.
The other things that this app is doing is, if I'm a field sales rep or if I'm a CSR, remember the web store experience is more for the end user, right? They only see their stuff. Here, the CSR is selecting the account and they can go review every account and see what is pending, field sales rep can go see what is pending and whatnot. So imagine this as more of a ordering portal on top of your ERP, with a lot more, with like more of modern technologies.
Yeah, but still, you can see any of the catalogs that you've been selected for that store. Similar to there's a lot of things that we rebuilt that we did use in our admin order creation, but made it a lot better. Filtering, we can bring in all the facets that are, for allowing the CSR to have a lot of those same tools that you would have in the web store, surfaced here in this application for quickly ordering and creating products, right? Or adding products to an order. But it's using all the same data, pulling out of Znode, all the pricing, the tier pricing that's set up, pretty much all the product data, and you can view all of that right from here.
Can rules be applied at that level?
So there are certain rules that we are, putting in roles, right? Like there could be a sales rep and a manager and a regional sales rep, and they have different permissions of overriding and all that, right? So there are certain things. There's a lot more details, Jay, that we can share.
We have a lot of new permissions that come along with this particular head, and also there's a bunch of new kind of entities and data behind this as well. There's more categorization of orders that you can create, different types of orders, not just a single order. We call those order types. We have order classes, and then to answer a little bit more on your question, we introduced this thing called order flags, which then you can tie workflow around. And that's, you can kind of set up certain types of orders to automatically have certain order flags that have to be carried out by, again, multiple teams. Maybe credit, the credit team has to check something. So you have to essentially go through and check all these boxes before you can actually complete an order. And then that can be tied into, whatever you want it to, right? So that there's a lot more configurable things that you can then customize to how your order creation process goes internally, right?
Is this
Yeah.
purely ordering, or will it include like RMA functionality at some point?
Yes, that's a great question. So the V1 that I'm talking about is we have heavily focused on order creation and management, and similar to the admin, but with just way more opportunities there. We are definitely, in our roadmap on this particular product, it's probably going to take a life of its own. And we have to integrate returns, quoting, a lot of the other things that you may see in the web store to be able to connect all of
It
that.
will be coming.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
But again, the whole concept is, when we look at B2B commerce is not just, hey, I have customers with different pricing, It's like all these different tools that we want to bring to our customers.
Yep. And there's a lot of this new dashboard that we have here. There's a lot of pre-configured things that you can set up that get tied to those permissions. You have people logging in or CSRs. They may only have access to certain types of orders or certain types of customers. You can configure all that here so they only see what they need to see and focus on, right?
Phone support, right? Phone support. So call center getting calls, hey, where's my order and all that. They can easily see it right here.
Yep. But again, long-term vision is to see all of your orders here. Like you could pull orders in from your ERP that are completed, and if you want to see them, also, the end customer who may be shopping on the web store, the vision here, in future versions is they may have access to this and they just see read-only and see where their orders are in that longer process, right?
So the other idea around this is, you guys, so let's say I'm John and I placed an order on the phone. Hopefully, Commerce Portal was used, and now I place online orders too. Because it's all going centrally in Zenode, I'm seeing all those orders together. So that's another advantage that our customers have been asking. Otherwise, you have to do another big integration with ERP, and we all know pulling order information from an ERP and letting the customer see it in the right way, that's its own complexities. So another tool that can be turned on from the admin, and usable if needed.
All right. And shout out to Walter. We do have overview, much more cohesive demo of this software available on our LMS now.
Already?
So you can see that coming forward. Like a real demo, an overview demo of it. Much longer course. So those are already there, available for consumption. Also, again, we just like to ask if there's anything from a training standpoint that you guys want to see. You can hit this URL. We'll probably send it out as well. Just let us know what you want to see from a training and support standpoint. We're always asking for feedback there.
Any other questions? So those are the 3 big releases and big features coming out in Zenode 9, right? And then we move into
Zenode 10, which we talked about last year at the previous Grow, and let's get into it. So Zenode 10, there's a lot of, obviously it's a very large release for us. And we've been working on for more than a year now, but really ramping up over the last 12 months. And we have a lot of new things coming out. V1 of Zenode 10 is really primarily focused a lot more on infrastructure and technology behind it. So a lot of upgrades to the platform there. And here's a couple of the highlights. We'll be showing you a new React storefront, 100% React and headless. It is completely decoupled, which is exciting, and obviously a huge new thing that we're working on.
And
lot
we'll
of
be
our,
showing that at the
yeah,
end here.
we'll show that and get into a little more specifics in all of these in some upcoming slides. But another, obviously, a huge effort was migrating from .NET Framework to .NET Core. By the time this release, I believe it'll be done at 8. So we're upgrading all API, the admin, obviously not upgrading the web store. We're replacing that with React. Introducing a lot more Azure services, which we'll get into that. Introducing a new plugin framework, which we'll be utilizing for our own like taxes and shipping plugins. And then also looking at that as a new way to release new features on Znode through our plugin network instead of full-on releases, right? And then future releases, which we'll get into. But Znode 10, we'll just go through, and the next 2 slides have some repeat information, but our new, similar architecture, but obviously some architectural changes that we're working on, really focusing on much more cloud and Azure. So we already talked about the new head or commerce portal, which obviously still going to have a storefront that's all React. Our admin console that's been ported over to .NET Core, that'll still be MVC for now. The future,
Just the app, just the front
the
end.
admin app. We'll be replacing that with React as well in the future. But utilizing Kubernetes, Azure Kubernetes, we've introduced an API gateway, utilizing Ocelot for that, but also have a Azure Gateway connected as well, or can be, if you want to utilize that. And we have the Commerce Portal, which really has its own service. So this really follows what we were really setting off long term. So 2-3 years for Znode 10 is a lot more decoupling, microservices. We're intentionally not introducing that all at once, so it can be an easier upgrade path from 9 to 10. But slowly you're seeing what we plan on doing in 10 like creep its way into even 9. So microservice for Commerce Portal, which has its own set of APIs, which then we'll be utilizing for the rest of Znode as well. And then our data layer, obviously, is .NET Entity Framework and all Azure SQL now, application insights that we're using for logging, and we are still heavily invested in Elasticsearch because we think it's an awesome platform, but we'll start decoupling that more as well, so you can more easily swap out it for a different search service if you so choose.
So I know that's a big slide. Any questions on that? So pretty much just the admin UI would be left on the Razor views, but everything else would be React apps and .NET Core. So just to give you guys an idea, I know there have been questions. Hey, is this a big change? Well, the good thing is the database, we have not even changed anything other than going from Microsoft SQL to Azure SQL, right? So it's all, and again, both will be compatible. On the .NET Core upgrade, it's more of a technology and utilities upgrade. So we haven't rewritten the code, guys. So that's because we wanted to make sure we mitigate the risk of, hey, we are not rewriting the software. So in fact, we have been testing the APIs and the admin app and the web store APIs for almost 9 months now. We have done that upgrade, and we even for fun we tried our 9x web application against the .NET Core APIs and so on. So that should be pretty much a very simple upgrade, like you do your 9.6 to 9.7, because it's more of a .NET library change versus any data structure and all that change. Does that make sense to developers and so on, right? So we've tried to mitigate that risk, as close as we could, so that there's no new. You're not starting with a new code base. It's all the same with upgraded, MVC like Microsoft Framework. And then obviously the change is going to come for the React app. And go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I mean that is definitely the bigger change, since there won't be an upgrade path on the storefront side, since it's a completely different platform. But that's obviously a lot of work, and it's been, we've had a lot of requests to do this a long time ago. So we're definitely excited, and I'll show you, I'll click around in our demo site that we have so far. There's a lot more work to be done. We'll talk about the release schedule of that. We're planning on beta at the end of this year for Zeno 10. We'll get into that in a minute. This slide, essentially, there's a lot of some repeat information on some of the highlights, but there are some additional things that I'll get into with our plugin framework. We replaced our reporting software with Power BI, so we rewrote all of our reporting. Oops. So we're using Power BI for that, which then is, again, now we can add reports and enhance reports in a low-code, no-code fashion. It's just going to be a lot easier for everyone. Dynamic tables I went over. We have expanded our dynamic schema, our global attributes, which some of you may know them as. We have complete coverage now with all our entities in Zeno 10. So right now we have store, user, account, entities that we're using, and we pretty much opened it up for everything now. So you can add
other entities,
Yeah, you can add schema to order if you want now, or order line items. We've enhanced that to make it even more flexible on the customization side. Yeah, I think we went through most of these other Azure SQL. One to highlight here is at the bottom, we did introduce a new caching mechanism, centralized cache, and we're using Redis. So that's all, some newer technology stuff that we're adding to the
And
platform.
again, it's more, so there'll be the caching mechanisms we have available today, but you can go to the configuration and change it to Redis if you wanted to. So there'll be more handlers available now, moving forward.
Yep, and this is just another kind of diagram just to outline what we're doing as far as the React storefront. You'll still be able to manage multi-store, multiple templates, or utilize the same template across multiple stores, but it's all built in React now, along with still like a combination of client-side and server-side rendering using Next.js and Node.js, and everything's just communicating through that new API gateway. So this, in theory, could just be pushed on another server and run independently.
Any questions? Ante, is this exciting?
Yeah. I may not seem excited. I'm just like, this is, Rupesh said, hey, go do this in 12 months, so it's a lot for me to get the team to do it. But it's exciting. Everyone's excited. Everyone likes working on the new React, a lot more than the MVC. So across the board, everyone's glad to see that this is coming.
Yeah, go ahead.
Will it be possible, when you guys tested to run a 9x website on the new .NET Core, will it be also possible to just take a phased approach to the upgrade about migrating all the backend and the app infrastructure part, but still using the MVC website?
So I've been asked that question 3 times now in the last 3 days. So we're going to take that into consideration. Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at it because, as you can imagine,
As a releasable, and so on.
it's a big change.
We did that for fun to just validate, but if you're going to release it that way to give folks time to take their own time to upgrade the web store, at their own pace, I think because we are getting that as an input a lot, we might have to consider that in a serious way in our release plan. Thank you. Great question. Frank, go to the plugin.
Go to the plugin first.
Oh, yeah. Or no, that's all.
Already opened up the browser.
Yeah. Go ahead.
This is the new React app. It's still showing I plan on replacing all of the hardware data to something different. But for now, we're utilizing the sample data that comes along with Znode. But this is, our UAT site is obviously not completed, but you can see pretty much everything that we have existing in Xeno today, we are rebuilding in this React app. So we're not, there may be some things you may do differently, but we're not really getting rid of functionality or deprecating.
So
it.
our goal
Right.
is to make sure the React app that comes out, it has every feature that the 9x web store already had. We're making sure that those things are all available, so that that becomes a starter kit for you guys.
Yep. But just to show, it's as many of you know, like, and can see. Sorry, not used to this laptop. Ante, we're going to click on this. This looks familiar. Our circular saw example from your demo. Figured I'd bring it up. But you can see, like, you click on something and it's there. Like, you're not seeing any loading. It's just so
It's so fast that
incredibly
sometimes
fast.
I have to see, like, did it even work? Did it call the server? What happened?
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm saying, yeah, it is a new page.
Yeah, so the caching is working, you know, it obviously the benefits of running whenever we can, things that are client side. There's other things that are still pulling live, right? Pricing and that sort of thing, but yeah, it's all coming along and extremely fast.
For this site that you're building in React, what consideration of mobile are you putting into that design? And that
Similar to what we had, so it's going to be mobile, you know, completely responsive and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you pop this up in a emulated tablet or such?
I'm not going to do that right now because that is still something that we're working on.
But next,
I'm not going to lie about it, but there is definitely, it is in consideration, and it's not 100% there. Like the menu system isn't completely.
But we would have the
responsive
3
right now, but-
breakpoints
Yeah.
like we had in the past. So when we release it, it will be 9x, pretty much similar to 9x, which had all the responsive points and so on, but it'll all be in React, like it is.
But yeah, it's exciting. You can still manage all of the different content areas and everything. We are introducing, I don't think it'll be ready for the beta release at the end of the year, but we are introducing a page editor now, a WYSIWYG drag and drop page builder. And our intention is definitely support what we have here. You can add and remove things from marketing and landing pages to pretty much anywhere on the site. And our intention is also like build templates off of that same type of experience. So,
So the
a lot of new things
cool,
coming.
the other cool feature we are introducing. So you know how in our admin app you can go control the branding, CSS, whatnot, and then you work with themes. Because it's a React app, we are going to give a container right in the admin to do some minor changes. So if the marketing team wanted to move the search box or do some layout changes and all that, because it's all in React, we are going to allow to do that. Obviously, as partners and developers, yeah, Brian is saying no. You know?
Don't do that.
As partners, you know, you'll obviously, take it through your CI, CD process and so on, and code management, things like that. But we do want to expose that in admin for a quick, layout change if somebody wanted to do. So just more control to marketing, and I'm hearing some no's, so we'll have to see how controlled we do that. But at least we are trying to, again, the whole idea is how do we give this more self-service?
Yeah, and you can just disable that.
Yeah.
In the web config, and you can intentionally, because I know that there's definitely risk, but for companies that are okay with taking on that risk, you can have that capability. But we understand that at least a lot of people in this room are going to turn that off. And we're also looking at tying that into actual source control and GitHub, so it mitigates some of that risk, but it doesn't take it away entirely. So, okay, any other questions on that?
Any other questions on the React app? Great.
All right. I'll touch on this real quick. I had mentioned it earlier, our plugin, I'm running kind of low on time here. Our plugin framework, again, it's to allow not only our internal development team, but there's a future kind of underpinning for this of where we're going to be taking our plugin framework. But It allows our customers or partners to build their own plugins more easily and manage those right through the admin. There's a whole new section with a repository management. You can turn plugins on and off. That's where you enable your Avalara plugin or your tax plugins or your shipping plugins. You can introduce new ones and kind of manage it there and encapsulate that without, again, making it easier to develop and more customizable, but also not get in the way of any sort of future updates. But we also plan on releasing new features utilizing this. So we're not tied to a feature release. We can release a new encapsulated feature of our own and push it out to the plugin framework, and then you'll be able to enable it that way. So it's internal and external tool. And we'll get into
Partners, community, everyone can build plugins and drop it in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Very similar to like Salesforce cartridges and things like that.
Yeah, so the future goal with this is definitely to open this up to everyone, and you can see the community aspect of it, of being other partners and customers developing plugins and putting them out there, eventually getting paid for them. You know, we'll have to build all of that in, but that's where we're going with this, right? You can share it, much more of community effort. Just the release planning. Right now we are planning on, and we're pretty close, we should be able to hit this Q4 of this year doing a beta release. It is invite only to a lot of the partners that are in this room that want to play around with the new platform. Next year doing a pilot program where we'll do that upgrade, and during the process add additional tooling and documentation on how to properly go from 9 any version to 10, right? And then obviously our GA release towards Q2 of next year, where then it'll just be available to everyone, and we anticipate then people maybe Q4 will start actually doing that upgrade from 9 to 10. And then obviously onboarding any new customers directly in 10.
And that's why, because we know it's going to be a journey, it's not going to be instantaneous for our customers because they've invested in 9 and so on. That's why we've been continuing adding features to 9. We didn't stop working on 9. That's why we're releasing the dynamic tables, all those things. So we have made sure that we are parallelly releasing things in 9 and as 10 is being adopted. Okay, so guys, this is close to my heart. Where are we as a product going, right? So the one big thing that for me as a CEO, Chief Product Officer is very clear. I want to eliminate upgrades. I don't even want to make it easy. I want to eliminate it. So we are in a mission to get too close to multi-tenant, right? So pretty much drop automatic updates to, we do that with Artify already. We have another product that we do automatic updates every other week. Every third week there's an update that is dropped and it's automatic for everyone. We want to do that for Znode, so our customers, never have to worry about updates. And when I say updates, obviously those automatic updates are going to be to the API, hopefully to the admin app, and then with this decoupled React app, you could still have your own little customizations that are needed, but they won't prevent you from automatic updates. So that's where we as a company are going, very close to multi-tenant SaaS. And 10 is a great foundation for us, but everything we are doing in 10 is keeping that in mind. So, my goal is hopefully every customer that goes to 10, we talk to them about, hey, we're going to be doing an automatic update for you, every release. So that's the whole idea. We want to eliminate upgrade for good. And just so that our customers are not behind, they don't have to spend all the dollars to, do an upgrade. They can consume features when they are released versus waiting for a year, and so on. So that's a big thing for us as a company, from a vision perspective, from where we are headed, from what we do every day, what we go to sleep with, and how do we get it done and whatnot. That's our goal and mission. Any questions on that? So that your partners can spend all the time more to help you guys make more money versus doing upgrades, right? They can enable more features for you. They can spend more time on customer experience and making it, transitioning to that. So that's the goal here. And that's where the plugin marketplace. So as we release 10, there's a plugin marketplace in that, so that again, with that whole automatic update, there's cartridges, plugins available, ready to go. Using Azure, so going away from the whole VM model, going away from the infrastructure model and going to real apps as a service. So Azure apps for everything. So that from a scalability perspective, our customers don't have to worry about that either. They can scale as needed, using the tools that are already available. And they don't have to launch another VM. They don't have to scale web servers and things like that. And then the last thing, you guys, is integrations, which is another thing that's close to my heart. So I know these e-commerce implementations and ongoing management and maintenance is a lot about this connectivity to business systems, right? To CRMs and third-party tools. One of our goals is, and we're working on that, and Stacy is heading that, is how do we, out of the box, make a lot of these integrations even more simpler? Meaning, I come into Zenode admin and I start configuring, here are the 5 touch points I want or data exchanges I want between 2 systems, between Zenode and my ERP, and do the mapping right there. Here's my sample JSON file or CSV file, or here's my order API, JSON looks like, and you do that mapping in the admin and you start an integration right there. So again, the idea is to reduce code, that custom code that our integrators and our partners and our customers have to constantly write and manage. How do we give that more as an admin configuration and setup and define? Again, it's the idea is it's not going to be completely out of the box, but how do we get you from 50% today to 85%? And at least for some of the standard touch points, like inventory or like pricing, they can be done in that manner. So just trying to make it more simple and give more admin tools to define all that very, very easily. Concept makes sense? So I think that's the big vision. From my perspective, I'm already losing my sleep on upgrades. I don't want that, for my customers, and that's where we are headed, guys. So that sort of concludes mine and Frank's presentation.